Note to self, clean the living room. Do the things you don't want to do. Maybe fold that week old pile of clothes. Note to self, get some exercise. Feels bad when you have to try, but as far as I can tell, that's how life goes. Note to self, don't let yourself worry quite as much, 'cause it'll end up finding enough. It always has up until now. Something else, you should think of other people a little more. You should have thought of that before, 'cause of everything you've written down. This is the first note that you wrote for someone else. Note to self. Note to self, keep choosing her. She's yours and wonderful, and forever is a long time to be sad. And one more thing, call your mother back. Talk for too long, it's probably half of what she'd like. She's the only mother that you have. And don't let yourself worry quite as much. It'll end up finding enough. It always has up until now. Something else, you should think of other people a little more. You should have thought of that before, 'cause of everything you've written down. This is the first note that you wrote for someone else. Note to self. I don't know how long I have to keep reminding myself to be who I want to be and not somebody else. Just thought by now I'd figure out the who and how I want to be. And I still let myself worry way too much, but it ends up finding out. Always has and does still now. I still need to think of other people more. Yes, I've thought of that before. Maybe one day I'll figure out you don't find peace until you love somebody else. You don't find peace until you love somebody else. Note to self.
Hey, thanks for watching with us today. I've got a question to get started. If you went back in your social media, if you do that kind of stuff to your timeline and look back, you ever do that and see old pictures and you go, man, look how much I have changed or whatever. What did you look like in April? Matter of fact, I'll put it up here. From April 2019 to now. If you were to look a little side by side, a little before and after. What's changed? Now, most people, when they would see a picture of themselves, they'd immediately look and go, for some people who get graying hair, that wouldn't be tough for me, but for some of you, you'd look at it and say, oh, I can see my hair, or I have gained, or I've lost, or I've done, or whatever it is, you'd notice those things first. If I were to ask you, what's changed in you from April 2019 to now? It's 5 years, by the way. That's 5 years of time that's gone by. But let's be more specific and let's look at it this way. What has changed in you spiritually? If you were to look at your spiritual life, would you look at it in 2019 and then look at it now and say, I tell you what, I've never felt closer to God. Or I've never been more involved with an open Bible, just learning, letting God speak to me and teach me to become the person I'm intended to be. I've never felt close. I've never felt like I was doing better. I've never felt like my attitudes were more like the God that made me, more like the person I hope to be and dream of being. I've never felt like in my habits I've never felt like I was doing better. It seems like I'm pushing down my temptation to do some really stupid things or say some stupid things or react in ways. I feel like I'm really doing a great job with that. I feel like I've never been closer. Or would you be like some of us would say, man, I'll be honest with you, lately it just feels like I've been floating for a while. Or some people, as I've talked to people about it the last week or so, have said, I just feel like I'm a little bit lukewarm right now. Or to be honest, I feel like there's some old patterns in my life that are kind of sneaking back up on me, kind of working their way back in that I thought I had pushed way aside. How are you 5 years forward? How have you progressed? Where are you? Have you made progress or have you lost? Relationally, how are you doing? Would you say in those relationships, if you're married, would you say, man, I feel closer to my spouse than I've ever felt before. I feel like I'm more invested. I feel like I understand them more and I'm understood. I feel like I've worked harder on that and it's producing these great results. Or would you say, well, we're just barely surviving? I'll be honest with you, if we can get through another month, that would be great. Or it feels like we're just more distant or we're just going through the motions. Honestly, it just feels like we kind of live in the same place and get through the same schedule, but there's not much more to it than that. How's it going for you? Or if you're single, in your key relationships, would you say, man, I feel like I'm building some relationships that as a result, those people are helping me become who I want to become. I've got some people who are speaking truth into my life, who can help hold me accountable. I've got some people I'm investing in who I feel like I can help care for them well and point them toward God. How are you doing relationally or financially? Would you say, listen, I am almost out of debt. 5 years ago we were here and now we're here. That student loan is almost on the back end of it, or my cars or my house, whatever it is for you. Man, we have been more responsible in the last 5 years than we ever had in just stewarding our finances well. It's allowed me to be more generous. It's allowed me to be less stressed. I'm not building a lifestyle that will require everything I've got just to survive. If God wanted me to make an adjustment in my life, I'm building some margin financially so I could do that. Or physically. Would you say, yeah, I'm in better shape than I've ever been before. Man, I feel better. I wake up more ready for the day. Physically, I'm winning. Average American gains 2 pounds a year. So the average person in the last 5 years has added at least 10 pounds minimum. How would you say you're doing? You go, boy, 2 pounds, that would be great, 2 pounds over a year for the last 5 years. I'm really struggling. Where are you when it comes to where were you then to where you are now? And it's kind of what we want to deal with today. And when we do, I heard this statement recently. It said this: when you're born, you look like your parents. I know when each of my kids were born, all the relatives and all our friends were like, yeah, I think he looks more like dad than mom. I think she looks more like mom than dad. I think they got their nose and their eyes and all of those kind of things. Everybody does that. Some people say every baby that's born looks like Winston Churchill, but I'm not sure if that's true or not. And if it's your daughter, often moms take that as a criticism. But I don't know what that looks like for you. But when you're born, you look like your parents. But here's where we want to land today. When you die, you look like your habits. When you're born, you look like your parents. But when you die, every decision we make, every habit we pick up, we are the composite total of thousands of decisions and thousands of habits that we build in our life. And when we die, that tells our story. When we're born, we look like our parents. When we die, we look like our parents. And here's the reality we want to face today. Intentions, because all of us have great intentions. 5 years ago, nobody said, hey, 5 years from now, you know what I want to be? 30 pounds heavier. Nobody said, you know what I want? I want to really be wrestling with that habit. I want to really be wrestling with that stupid attitude that I have been fighting my whole life. I want to be saying, hey, I'm sorry, my bad, I shouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have done that over and over again. Nobody does that. Our intentions are to say, I'm tired of saying I'm sorry. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change. But intentions don't determine your direction. Unfortunately, your habits do. Good intentions are wonderful. I mean, everybody who's ever started a new year with good intentions, everybody who's awakened on a Monday and said, I'm doing it better this week, that's a great thing. And if you don't ever have good intentions, you'll never have good habits. But unfortunately, intentions don't determine directions. Our habits do. And so that's what we want to dig into today. And as we do, I want you to land. We've been in a series called Power Tools. And the purpose of it is we're trying to get tools, not just little hand crank, not a little screwdriver. We're trying to find powerful things that'll help us move to a place in life that we can be proud of. A place in life where we represent our family, where we represent God, where we represent followers of Christ in the best possible way. We all want that. I don't think you're watching this today because you don't care about that stuff. I suspect all of us do to differing levels. Well, we've gone through and where we started, Jeremy's done an amazing job of walking us week by week. We started by saying habits, you don't just change your habits. Before you do that, you've got to back up and we've got to recognize the who in what we do. If you don't recognize who I am and whose I am, then our changes will be short-term gains and long-term frustrations. That habits don't just change because of willpower. And we're not just looking for tools, we're looking for power tools, and the power tools start with understanding who we are. That's our identity. That is who God made us to be and who we can be as followers of Jesus. Because he said, I'll make you a brand new creation. I'm not starting with the old thing trying to fix it. I'm going to make you something brand new. And then we kind of walked through and we said we also have to understand some of the why we do what we do. Not just who we are, not just our identity, but we need to understand that we don't want to just be better for better's sake. We want to be better because that's what God created us to do. It's not just us saying, oh, I'll try a little harder. It is literally saying that God who is within us gives us the power to become what he created us to become. So there's a who and there's a why. And then we've been dealing with a how. How do we begin to initiate that? How do we begin to make it play out? We figured out even that it's not about just trying harder, that the life we have is supposed to be about training. It's about doing things that help us become stronger, and then through the power of Christ, we can become way beyond anything we ever hoped, dreamed, or imagined. Well, today we want to land in a place with 3 little verses, 3 immutable truths, 3 laws that will give us something we can hang on to, and it's how we'll wrap up this series. And really what we're wanting to figure out is, who are you going to be 5 years from now? Wouldn't it be great if you could say, hey, 2019 to 2024, I don't know if that's been the best path for me, but in 2029, I'm going to tell you this, it is predictable where you will end up. Your habits predict it. It's not your intentions. It's your habits that predict where you will land 5 years from now. And I just want to say this, I have every intention of being a better version of me then than I am now. You deserve that. My family deserves that. But listen, God deserves that, and I do. I don't want to tread water. I hope you don't either. As we dig into it, the first verse is in Galatians chapter 6, and it starts with this. And this is super loaded, strong language. I love this. It says, don't be misled. Some versions say, don't be co-opted. Don't be misled. Don't misunderstand. One version says, don't be stupid. How about that one? It's just saying, if you're not careful, you're going to miss this. Don't be misled. You can't mock the justice of God. It is saying, I'm going to say something right now that is true. It's law. It is the way it is. It's like the law of gravity that says, if I jump off this stage, I'm going to go down. If I'm on planet Earth, jump off of this, down is where I'm going to go. I don't go, yeah, I'm going to check it out and see. You can go up for a second, some less than a second, some more. But in the end, you're headed down. It's a law. It's immutable. It's irrefutable. And what we're talking about today is the same thing. You cannot mock the justice. It doesn't say you might not, you should not. It says you cannot mock the justice of God, and it finishes out this way. You will always harvest what you plant. And it begins giving us this crazy language of harvesting and planting, or planting and harvesting. And these laws that hold true over and over. I'm going to give you 3 of them. And for me, this is dipping back into my upbringing. There's some truths that I'm going to throw out to you today that I've said to myself thousands of times over my lifetime. It has held true for me. It was taught to me when I was young. It's nothing new. Maybe you've heard it. Hey, I hope before you leave, these 3 things will be drilled into your head as well, because I think they carry an awful lot of weight. 3 laws that you can live by. The first one is you harvest what you plant. If you don't like the life you're living, if you don't like the life you're harvesting, plant something better. And here's the crazy truth. This is so basic, I almost feel silly saying it, but if you plant an apple seed, you don't get an orange tree. If you plant good things, you get good things. If you don't, you don't. As a matter of fact, the very next verse kind of digs into it with this language. It says, those who live only to satisfy their own sinful nature. Let's just stop right there. If you live and it's all about me, it's all about what can I get and how can I get what I want and can what I get and hang on to the rest. If that is your life, and man, we live in a world that says this is life. It's all about your pleasure. It's what comes easiest to you. It's what you enjoy the most. You just go for it. You got one life, run it that way. Well, this just says if you live to satisfy your own sinful nature, your harvest will harvest decay and death from that sinful nature. It just says decay is going to be part of your life. When we look around and we feel like our world is falling apart, and then you look at what people are pursuing, and most people are pursuing me, whatever I can get, whatever feels good, looks good, sounds good to me, then do it. It's not what is the truth, it's what is my truth, and my truth trumps everything else, because in the end, it's my life. And it says when you live everything independent of God, then decay and death is what you're going to land with. When you sow those seeds, when you do that, you're going to harvest that life. Will you notice it tomorrow? No. But will it play out? Yes. It is a law. Just like gravity, if I jump off here, I go down. This is gravity. If you satisfy your own sinful lust, you'll harvest decay. But then it goes on. But those who live to please the Spirit, who live to please their Creator, who live a life that says it's not just about me, I'm put here for a purpose, and my purpose is to become like the one who created me, and the reason for that is to affect the lives of those around me in a positive way. It says they will harvest everlasting life from the Spirit. It says God has power tools that He will help us live the life that we were intended to live, and the outcome will be one that when we look back on, we don't regret. It's the law. You know what it is? Whatever you plant, that's what you harvest. If you plant grapes, you don't harvest grapefruit, even though they both have the word grape in them. What you harvest will have everything to do with what you plant. So part of the question is, spiritually, what are you planting? Relationally, what are you planting? It's not accidental. It's not like, oh, that guy just got lucky. He fell into a great life. It doesn't work that way. You can fall into some positive stuff, but in the end, life plays out to be a harvest that is exactly based on what you planted. So the first law that we need to live by is what you plant is what you'll harvest. Remember that. Hey, it's something we teach our kids, and the only difference is a lot of adults get past being a kid and move on and forget about this ugly truth. Second one is this. First, you harvest what you plant. Second, you harvest more than you plant. We used to live down in South Florida for a little while, and just north of us, is where all of the citrus stuff is growing. All the citrus trees are, the orchards, and you can drive by and there'll be orange groves of just thousands and thousands of trees. And here's what I've noticed. Each one of those trees, every year, unless there's a freeze, and that's when it actually gets on the news, you'll see little icicles hanging off the oranges. Most years that never happens, and you look and one tree will bear hundreds, thousands maybe, of oranges, hundreds for sure, every year. And you know what they didn't do? They said over the course of 30 years or 20 years, this tree's going to bear thousands of oranges. You know what they didn't do is say, hey, let's get 14,000 orange seeds and plant it right here because we're going to need a bunch of oranges from this tree. It didn't work that way. What is planted, what begins as a seed, grows and produces so much more. Here's the crazy reality. You'll harvest more than you plant. That is the way it works. Good and bad. There's a snowball effect. When I plant things that are unhealthy, and a lot of us have experienced that, man, I don't know how I ended up with this habit. I just started, and it was just that. It was just me and my buddies, and it was funny, and it was that. And somehow now I wish I could stop. Hey, I just clicked there once and it wasn't a big deal, and honestly, God wouldn't have made it look so good. I would have never done it. It's really not my fault. And now it occupies my mind all the time, and I find myself in my lowest days going back to my lowest habits, and I get so sick and tired of that. And most of us have experienced some of those things in life. You're like, I wish I'd never taken the first bite of that. I wish I'd never gone there the first time. I wish I'd never said the first word to them because I didn't realize, and it seems so innocent. But here's the crazy thing. You harvest more than you plant. In good things, it's the same way. When you plant good habits, when you plant healthy things, it grows and snowballs and affects other things in your life. One of the things that I find out in my life is that when I tackle something that needs to be tackled and make progress in it, I usually find I make progress in more than one area. When mentally or emotionally or spiritually I do something, often I'll find myself physically doing some things better, relationally doing something, financially doing things better. You always harvest more. There is a book, I'll just give you the name of it here. It's called The Compound Effect by Darren Hardy. Pretty much if you summed his whole book up, this is my words, he would say this, or this is what I read from it: small, smart choices plus, when you add to that, consistency. When you make small, smart choices and then add consistency to the mix, that means you don't just think it's a good idea and start it. It means you do it over time, and then time is the other thing, consistency and time. You end up with massive improvement. You end up with life change. You end up with things that will be markedly better in your life. His whole book is how to do that, the compound effect, small, smart choices, plus consistency, plus time, ends up in the life you intended to live. When you look at that, he tells a story in the book, and it's just an example, and it's a story of how small things with consistency over time change things. Sometimes it's improvement, sometimes small dumb choices with consistency over time equals decay. It's how we fall apart. How did we ever end up here? Small dumb choices with consistency over time, and you go, I never thought I would ever be saying this about me. He tells a story, and we'll do it this way. Let's just say in scenario one, there's this person. We won't give them a name, but we'll say it's a guy for now because it'll be easier for me to remember. There's this guy, and he's pretty stressed, and every night, late in the evening, late at night, he's frustrated. He has a hard time winding down. His head is full of the day and all of the stuff and all of the stress. And every night he grabs a beverage that'll help calm him down a little bit. It'll help level him off, just help him go to bed. It's not a big deal. It's not an addiction. It's not a problem. It's a beverage, okay? Does it every night, and it's just his way of finally putting an end to the day, taking a deep breath. It allows him to clear his mind enough so he can go to sleep, get up tomorrow, and tackle it again. He does that every night. It's 125 calories. It ain't killing nobody. It'll all be okay. That's what he does. It's always been his habit for the last few months, few years, and he continues that on, except all of a sudden life is getting more stressful. And scenario one, our guy, he says, you know what? What one used to do, I may need two. And so he adds one more beverage every night. Because the other is not knocking the edge off. As a matter of fact, it takes two now, and he adds 125 calories. It's 125 calories. You can eat a piece of gum and almost be there, you know. It's not a big deal. He adds that every day, every Monday, every Tuesday, every Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, all of the days. 1 week, first week of the month, second, third, fourth, first month, January, all December, he gets through. He does that for 27 straight weeks. Just one little beverage, just at night. Not a big deal. I'm not hurting anybody. It's not super big. It's just a little. Over the course of 27 weeks, that accumulates though. 125 calories every night over 27 weeks equals 177,000 added calories. Just one beverage. He just walks to the refrigerator. Sometimes he gets two out. Honestly, it's just psst, and you sit while you're watching TV. It is such a small thing. 177,000 added calories over 27 months. I mean, not 27 weeks, over 27 months. You know what that equals? That equals 33 and a half pounds. When you put those calories, that's pretty predictable, by the way. If you add 177,000 calories to your life, there's about 33 pounds unless you do something to offset that. So for this guy, 27 months later, he's lived all these days, all these weeks, all these months. He added one little habit of 125 calories a night, and he did it because there was a reason, because he just needed to be able to go to bed and go to sleep, and this was the way he got there. That's what he chose to do 33 and a half pounds later. So that just makes sense. That's logical. Sometimes there's a lot of other things that you add in, but that is baseline. That's math. Let me tell you scenario 2. There's a guy and he's going through a lot of stress and life is kind of wearing him out. And sometimes he has a hard time going to bed at night. So he sits up and watches TV. And sometimes while he's sitting up late at night and his wife or whoever's gone to bed and there's not much accountability, sometimes he looks at some other stuff that he shouldn't, just like our first guy did. But instead of trying to get a beverage to take the edge off, which is what he's always done, he decides, you know what I'm going to do? Instead of doing that for the last hour, hour and a half after my wife goes to bed, I'm just going to go to bed. I'm just going to go to bed an hour earlier, an hour and a half earlier. I'll get a little bit more rest. Maybe instead of trying to take the edge off, I'll just try to be disciplined enough to go to bed earlier when my wife does. It'll take away some temptation. It'll take away that. So he actually drops the beverage, the one a night that he started with. Over the next 27 months, you know what he did? He dropped 177,000 calories from his diet. You see the difference? One little decision over 27 months changes a lot. It changes our habit. Sometimes it changes what we're doing in times that we shouldn't be doing it. Sometimes it changes the way we're thinking. Sometimes it changes what we're using to escape from reality. And that's just that's just what Darren uses as an illustration. His whole point is small, smart choices with consistency over time equal improvement. It means life change. Around here we call those next steps, by the way. It means we're moving forward in the life God has intended for us. And that's exactly what we're supposed to be doing. So the first law is this: you harvest what you plant. The second one is you harvest more than you plant. And then the third one is you harvest after you plant. The problem is this one is the most difficult of all. Because what I want to do is I need results. I need instant gratification. If I'm going to try harder at something, I need to see a result. I'm not very good at small, consistent changes over time. The time part is the hardest for me. It's like, yeah, I went to the gym like 5 times, and I'll be honest, looked in the mirror while I was there because there's mirrors everywhere. I looked just as bad as when I started, so I quit going to the gym. Now, nobody would just say that out loud, but most of us have done that to some extent. I went long enough to get really sore and tired, and then I thought, man, I don't have time for this, and I went back to my life. I got some donuts on the way home. It's financially when you work so hard for the last 3 months, and you pay off, and you look at my student loan thing, and now instead of owing $35,500, I owe $35,350. You're like, this is never going to pay off. It's like when you change some attitudes or change some actions in your relationship, and it's been 3 or 4 weeks, and you've kind of been working at it, and then your spouse says something, and you're like, you don't even notice how hard I've been trying. You don't care. Nobody even sees it. It's not worth it. And the truth is, it's small, smart choices with consistency over time. The truth is, you harvest what you plant more than you plant, and you harvest after you plant. If you plant a seed, you don't get a tree with fruit on it tomorrow. You have to believe that if I plant and nurture and water and cultivate and make this happen, there is a payday coming. As a matter of fact, Galatians, our passage that we were looking at, says it this way, said, so do not get tired of doing what is good. It's almost like he saw me coming and said, hey, if I don't say this, this guy's never going to get it. I need to tell him that starting is not the win. Getting all amped up, getting a new app on my phone that's going to track it, none of that is the win. Don't get tired of doing good. At just the right time, and that's the key phrase, we'll reap a harvest of blessing if we don't give up. Just the right time is not determined by me. It has to be determined by God. For some of you that have been fighting to do things better for a long time, and you're like, I'm not sure it's paying off, you have to trust that there's somebody bigger involved in this, that the power is not your willpower, but that God is at work in you, and if you don't give up at the right time, you'll reap a harvest of blessing. Now, some of you have been through that, and you go, that is my story. But sometimes that is so difficult for us to land on. It's not a matter of starting well. It's not a matter of good intentions. It's something bigger than that. We don't judge the success of the day by the harvest of the day. We judge the success of the day by the seeds that we've sown. That is so important for us to remember. We don't judge the success by the harvest we reap today. If you just look around and say, was it worth it? You're never going to find yourself making smart, small, consistent choices. Over time, however, they will benefit you. The seeds we sow is all we can control today, and that's what is so important. This last week, I was walking around our building doing a bunch of stuff and got tired, sat down for a minute. When I did, I saw some stuff, and I just want to kind of finish this up today by giving us, the question is, where are you going to be 5 years from now? Where do you want to be? What are the odds of you being there? And I just want to say it's pretty predictable. But I want to speak to some really specific people. Can I just start with this? Can I say, if you're a parent, I think you've been given one of the toughest jobs in life, and even tougher right now. Man, there's so much stacked against you. There's so much stacked against your kids. And I just want to say to you as a parent, it becomes so important that you know what your objective is as a parent. For some of us, you reach a point when you're raising your kids that surviving is your main objective. And I get it. It's overwhelming. Every time you think you get it figured out, they change. The world changes and you change. Everything keeps moving. It is not an easy thing. Could I just say this to you? You need to know, if you're a single parent, if there's two of you doing this together, you need to be able to sit down and say, what is our one objective above all else? It doesn't mean there's not 50 things to get done, but the one objective, and can I just say this as boldly as I can, if you're a parent and you're a follower of Christ, your job is to raise kids who love Jesus, who follow Jesus. That is your number one thing. Hey, can I just tell you this? If they bat 500 the rest of their life and don't follow Jesus, you missed your mark. They missed their mark. Sometimes you can do everything you can and it doesn't always play out the way you want, but it is your number one objective. You can't control all the outcome, but you can sow the seeds for this one. You can make small, smart choices matched with your consistency on this subject. And then you can trust God for outcomes. And if you haven't seen the outcome, you can keep trusting God because God's not finished. But listen, if they get the right score at every dance competition, if every time they go to a piano recital, if every time you go to your gymnastics class and they do better and all of that, all of those are good things. And by the way, not shooting at any of that. Man, I got to experience some of that growing up that benefited me, certainly with my kids. I'm not trying to downgrade that. But if your primary goal is I'm going to give them a great work ethic or I'm going to make them a great student, can I just say, the Bible will say it this way, what would happen if you gained the whole stinking world and lost your own soul? What benefit would it be? And there's only one major priority. There's only one central theme, is that I need to point them toward Jesus. I need to point them toward a relationship with God. I need to point them to the only hope they have. I need to make small, smart, and consistent choices. I was saying earlier, I was sitting around the building, I was tired, so I stopped and got some water to drink, and I sat down at a little sitting area outside our 412 youth ministry room. When I did, there's a little journal laying there, or there's a little notebook. I opened it up, I didn't know what it was. When I opened it up, it's obvious somebody had been writing in it. It was obvious that it was not a guy, by the way. I'll show you in just a second. And whoever it was had been at church the Sunday before. I'll just show you what it looked like because I got permission to do so. This is what it looked like. And it's from April 14th. And can I just say this? This is a young teenage girl. And we talk about all the bad things in life, all the things going wrong, all the things that we need to change and can't, all the things that the stupid, crazy, out of control youth do in life. And then I was sitting, look at this, I found it incredibly powerful. One, what a great job of the day. We talked about this in our communion time. And then all of Jeremy's message. And it was so practical. It was so on point. All the way down to our little logo and stuff, all the things that were said. And imagine this through the eyes of a young teenage girl who is bombarded every day about how you should look and how you should feel and what is normal for you and what doesn't last and what will last and all of the things that she's faced with. And this is what she's filtering. Sitting in this room with a couple of markers out, making these notes. And as I just read through them, I was blown away by how well she listened and what she took in. And I was reading this through those eyes. That distorted identity, destructive habits, it comes from agreements we make about who we are. And I'm thinking what she is facing and what she's going to face. And the only hope she has. And I'm just looking through this going, man, I'm glad she was part of that. And man, what wisdom on her behalf digging into this. You don't just come and zone out and check your Facebook or whatever it is you're playing with that day. Well, you're focused on this. And I was just so blown away by how deep into it. And then it made me say, that's not accidental. That young lady didn't get there. That is parents who had their kid here. Small, smart, consistent choices. There's a million things in this family's world, and they chose this thing over those. Because they said these small, smart, consistent choices will reap benefits. They'll reap they'll harvest what we plant, we'll harvest more than we plant, and they're going to harvest way down the road a lot longer after they plant. That's parents who believed in that. And then I mentioned it and said, hey, this was here, and then I got the story of whose it was. And then I got the story of some of the why as well. Parents who've invested in their kid, but it's bigger than that. It's also a small group leader who's just out of school, who is investing now in this young teenage girl, who has sat and they've talked about how to build things in a journal and how to take notes and how to hang on to truth beyond a Sunday so you can take it home and you can live with it and it can be a part of what you're becoming. It's somebody who took time out of their life to go and say, let's buy you a journal so you'll have a place for that. It is one generation just barely beyond investing back into the next. And you know why? Because that young lady had parents who said small, smart, consistent choices will pay off over time. And they invested in their kid. Two sets of parents who've done that job. And now the beneficiary is a young teenage girl. And can I just tell you that's happening all through our ministry. Man, I don't know what you could do that's a better investment than that, but if you got one, send it to me. I'm in. That's what it means. Sowing seeds that are going to pay off down the road. Do you think God can use this over the next 5 years in this person's life that's going to face all of the crazy of the teenage years? Can I just say, if you're a parent, have one objective? Can I say to another group, if you're seasoned, you're not young and you don't have kids at home, but you've got years behind you and your hair is graying a little bit here and there. If that's you, can I just say, it is so easy on that end of life to start saying, man, it's not about the 5 years from now, who knows if I'll be around. I've kind of had my dreams and now I'm just kind of running out the back end of life. Can I just say, don't live that way? Man, if it's you and you're looking and saying, man, how have the seeds you sown, what seeds are you planting right now for your harvest? And you're like, yeah, I remember when. Stop remembering when and start sowing things for today. Keep dreaming about what God needs to be doing in your life. Keep fighting for the habits you become. Keep looking for 5 years from now. Well, I'm not promised 5 years from now. Well, I promise you this, 5 years from now, you won't be better off than you are now unless you do it on purpose, and it won't just be your intentions. It'll be cultivating good habits that'll take you there. Don't get old. Old is not a number. Old is an attitude. Old is when you feel like life is pretty much gone by. I'm a bunch of stories of my past. That's what old is. Don't get old. Old's a curse. I used to have, she's passed away now, I used to have a 82-year-old friend named Muriel, and she called me once a week and she'd say, hey Chris, this is what I'm learning, and she would tell me. She'd say, these are the verses I'm memorizing. She was legally blind, so she would have her grandkids write them out, like, 2 or 3 words on a big poster board, and she would have them all over her house. And that's the verse. Hey, this is the 3 verses I memorized this week. I hear people who are 50 that go, well, I can't do that. Just a load of garbage. You know why? She was elderly in age, but she wasn't old. Man, God was changing her and growing her, and it should motivate us to do the same. If you're parents, hey, if you're seasoned, can I just say, whatever stage of life you're in, if you're dealing with habits that have dominated you, please hear this today. You are not stuck in those the rest of your life. That the power tools that God gives you, the power He puts within you, is enough for you to go beyond that. If you're somebody that has had the same attitudes and been stuck in them, and you're even everybody else is sick of them, but you're sick of them too, can I just say you have the power to change? I'll finish with this. April 2029 is coming, and the outcomes are predictable. If you want to know where you'll be spiritually, relationally, financially, physically, I can predict. I've got the ability to predict your future, and it'll be predicted on what your habits are between now and then. We're in West Tennessee. I don't know where you're watching this from. If you're in West Tennessee, if you went just a little bit south of here, you'd run into Interstate 40, just 4 or 5 minutes down the road. If I turn left going from where I am right now, that would be east. Here's some predictability. Now, I may hit a pothole the size of Wisconsin. I may hit ridiculous traffic or whatever, but if I keep driving east, I'm going to hit Nashville, Tennessee. That's where Nashville, Vegas, baby. That's where I'm going to end up. It is very predictable. You don't get on the interstate, go that way, and keep going east, and go, I cannot believe it, I ran into Nashville. You go, nope, there's signs predicting it. If you go that way, you're going to end up there. If I turn right, just by the way, about an hour from now and 400 potholes from now, I'm going to run into Memphis if something hasn't run into me first. Nobody is surprised. If you go west, you're going to go, hey, if you keep going, you're going to hit the Mississippi River. Nobody is shocked by it. It's really predictable. Can I just tell you where you'll be in 2029 is really predictable. It won't be anything about your intentions. It won't be about your wishes. It won't be about, I'm just stuck this way. It'll be that your habits, not your intention, determine your direction, and your planting determines what you're going to harvest. It does it every time for us. That's not bad news, that's great news, because we don't have to wonder how the game ends, because God said, I will give you the power to get you past your stuckness and take you to where you need to be. We are promised that. My question for you is, if you don't like the trajectory of your life right now, if you don't like what you're harvesting, then change what you're planting. If you don't like it, what have you been planting? And what are you willing to change? We all have that power within us. It's not our willpower. It is that He will power within us. And He will honor small, smart choices. when we mix them with consistency, over time, God has promised an outcome that we can be proud of. So God, help us with that. Help us not get revved up watching or listening or thinking. Help us have the hard disciplines of recognizing who we are, why you've made us the way we are. And the reason we want to change isn't just so we'll feel better, it's so we can live out the destiny you've given us. And would you empower us today to tackle, as we've looked at the habits we need to get rid of already, help us dig in. Help us dig into fresh soil. Help us plant great seed. Help us consistently make smart choices, and we will trust you for the outcome. And when it happens, we will recognize it came from you. So thanks for the help. We can't wait to see all that you're going to do. We ask it in your name. Amen. Hey, thanks for watching.